Okay, you're live.
All right. Good evening and welcome everyone to the August 11th Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. We will call the meeting to order at 6:32 by the looks of it. Tonight we will have need to enact our alternate as we have one member not present. So we will be having Mary Stowe join us as a voting member tonight. So we'll start off with a roll call for attendance of members. Maureen Cowan.
Here.
Richard Hayes.
You're off, Rich.
Rick, you're still on mute.
Here. Here.
Okay. Melanie Malone.
Here.
Mary Stowe and Judy Drake. Okay. We have everybody. If I blip in and out, I'm sorry, my internet's kind of crazy. And of course it's stormed today. So on our agenda today, we do have two public hearings and the board minutes, and then possibly some annual training at the end for the board members. To start off, we will go over the minutes from our July 14th meeting. Would somebody like to move the July 14th minutes?
I still move.
Go ahead. Melanie did.
I'll second.
Okay. Who moved them? I'm sorry. Mary? Okay. Any changes or modifications to those meeting minutes?
No.
Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of approval of the July 14th, 2020 minutes, say aye.
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 Opposed, abstentions? Okay, great. Thank you. All right. All right, so that's beyond us. We will move into our first public hearing. Our first public hearing is being done electronically via conference call instead of having a public meeting, open public meeting. And we're considering tonight consideration of an appeal made by applicants John Parker and Joy Baranu, probably slaughtering that name, on behalf of 321 BG Rev Trust, owner of 321 Bill George Road, tax parcel number 24.5-1.1, located in a lakeshore and L1 zoning district for an area variance from the town of Lansing zoning ordinance, land use ordinance, sorry, section 504, schedule 2, which requires a minimum 10-foot side yard setback. Applicant is seeking a 10-foot area variance from the minimum side yard setback to facilitate placement of a new garage with a footprint of 1,288 square feet. This is a type 2 action under the State Environmental Quality Review Act. Would somebody like to make a motion to open the public hearing?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, I have Melanie and second by Rick
Sure.
at 6:36 p.m. All right. Do we have to do a roll call? Well, it's probably easier just to make sure that we get everybody. Maureen Cowan,
Here. Yeah, aye.
Rick Hayes,
Aye.
Melanie Malone,
Aye.
Mary Stowe,
Aye.
Judy Drake, aye. Okay, so we are in the public hearing. Is the applicant available to discuss the variance with us?
Yes, and there's also a couple other people in the waiting room I'm not about, but I will try to, saying I'm muted. Okay. I'll figure out what they're looking for. So let me just admit the applicant here.
Okay. Okay, so Tom, we have entered the public hearing on the appeal. And at this time, if you would like to discuss with us your variance request and explain why you are making this request. You're on mute.
How's
There
that?
you go. That's better.
Nice to see you all. I'll explain it to the best of my ability. We originally designed this garage for behind our house on Bill George Road for the other side, the south end of the property. But after talking with Lynn, and I think that the people doing some of the original research with excavation, we're really concerned about the proximity to our septic field, which is an unusually good place for here on the lake. They even dug up the ends of the septic things just to see where it was. And their decision was putting the garage where we had originally planned. And I think we renewed the building permit for that site for 8 or 10 years consecutively while we fiddled with this. They suggested it was just too close to the septic field and the drainage stream that is on the south side of our property. So we decided to relocate the entire thing to the north side of the property, closer to the house. But the back side of our property is very steep. And so they did a bunch of the site work, removed a bunch of trees and grading in order to make an undisturbed footprint for the plan, which matched our original plan for the garage that we were granted a permit for. And it became apparent that to really have a proper undisturbed footprint for the building, which is going to require a full foundation and basement, it was going to be very difficult to do this within the 10-foot, without getting closer than 10 feet to our northern property line, which is adjacent the Campbell's property, our neighbors. And it's sort of, given the slope of the property, every foot we go away from the property line exponentially increases the amount of excavation, the amount of fill, and everything else that we'll have to do to do the foundation work and to build this garage. So the request is just to allow us to get closer than 10 feet to the property line with the foundation of the building. And my goal would be to get it as close as necessary, but no closer than necessary, as close as possible, but no closer than necessary to the property line. And before we got too serious about this, we discussed this with our neighbors, the Campbells, to make sure that this was acceptable to them. So at this point, we've had the plans redrafted and re-stamped by the engineer for siting on the north side of the property. And the question that remains is, can we get closer to the property line than the 10 foot, which I believe is what is required by our local code. Hope I didn't go on too long, but that's the gist of it.
Okay. And from the survey map that we received, your septic does not show. So can you just kind of talk us through where that
Sure.
septic is?
On the survey map, the septic is directly to the south of the house. So if you see the house, and then there's a place that says gravel parking. The
Mhm.
entire area to the south of the house, that would be to the right, is essentially the septic tank and the septic field, which is something that we're doing everything possible to kind of maintain in perfect shape. So we have it pumped annually, and like I said, the Greeps, some folks from Groton, when they came over to do some of the site work for us, were, to their credit, were pretty adamant that we did not want to disturb our septic field. And I believe they had somebody come out from the town to look at this while they dug up the ends of the septic field, just to establish where it was. And their other recommendation was that we not get too close to the drainage creek area that goes on the south side of the property for all sorts of reasons. Runoff, drainage, DEC concerns, etc. So in the end, it required us taking down a bunch of trees and sort of moving the whole thing over to the other side of the property. The other thing I would say is that if we go for the full 10 feet of distance from the north edge of the property, it kind of starts to move the garage and the drive behind the house on the slope, as opposed to kind of nicely lined up with the planes of the house. So the way we would like to do it, the south plane of the garage would line up with the north plane of the house. I think it would just look more, would have better street appeal, and look less like it was just squeezed back in on this impossible slope.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Board members, do you have questions for the applicant?
Yes, how many stories total? Is it a basement, 2 stories, and an attic?
It's really a basement, which is the garage, and then a story with a clerestory, kind of a cupola on the top. And the cupola is what I'm calling kind of a walking clerestory. It's just it goes the length of the structure. So it's sort of an attic cupola, but what it's going to let me do is, if I open all those windows, I can pull cool air up from the downstairs and make a nice draft, so it helps cool the building in the summer. Otherwise, it's going to be unheated and just with electricity.
And so the total square footage is 2,664 square feet? That's on the application. Or is this a total floor area?
Well, let's see. I might have to do a quick calculation. The basement floor area is 10 feet shorter than the first floor area, because we build it so there's kind of an overhang, so it's a patio kind of on the first floor. So the basement part would be 36 by 28, and the footprint of the first floor would be 46 by 28.
And there's 3 landings? Is that, I was looking at the
Yeah, there's one landing for the first floor, and then a second landing is for the clerestory area, the kind of cupola area on the top.
Okay.
And so the design is sort of based on a carriage house design. So I would call it a carriage house. I actually, the clerestory thing was, the place I've seen it is on a building by the DuPont company out east, I think in Rhode Island, had a building that had this same sort of feature that I like. And, I can't say that it's entirely, there's a lot of logic for it. It's really mostly just an aesthetic.
Thank you.
I didn't want it to look like a Morton building.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Melanie, finish, and then I'll go.
So, I'm not exactly sure, but would you be applying for like an occupancy permit eventually for summer guests and things like that? And you mentioned a patio, so would there be living space here?
No, I'm considering it's entirely storage and garage space. What I mean by the patio is just that it's sort of like the garage doors are inset for 10 feet, so that when the garage doors are open, you could sort of work inside or outside if you were doing garage work or stuff without being in the rain. And it's an alternative to having sort of a shed thing to I thought it would just kind of make the building more interesting, and since it's up higher than the house, it would be a nice place to sit if you were out working in the garage or something like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, my follow-up question, I have a couple of questions. Mr. Parker, I don't know, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so one of them were similar to what Melanie just asked about. The written application says carriage house, and so I was concerned about that statement implies to me that it's a living quarters typically.
Oh no, that may just be poor wording on my part. I have a house out in Cutaville, near Mecklenburg, that I've had for 40 years, and it had a barn on the back of the house that I don't know if you folks are familiar with Rick Lazarus, but he rebuilt the barn on my place out in Cutaville, and he called it a carriage house when he rebuilt it, and he received a historic Ithaca, Tompkins County Historic Preservation Award for redoing my carriage house, even though it turned out later that it's about 400 feet into Schuyler County. But anyway, that's how I got off on the carriage. So I called my garage barn out in Cutaville a carriage house, and I thought that's kind of what I was recreating here.
Okay, so one other question I have, you live in the house that's depicted on the front of the diagram?
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't live too far up the road from you on Lansing Station Road. I took a walk up that way this morning.
Uh-huh.
And just to kind of take a look at the view there, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the questions I had is your primary residence a duplex?
No, we bought this place in 2006, and there's an apartment downstairs that for, I don't know, 14 years or so had the music teacher from Ithaca High School rented it. And we've just continued, we actually completely redid the the downstairs apartment. So we have a tenant downstairs, and have ever since we've been here. The original tenant came with the property, and we've just kept the apartment, although we've rebuilt it.
Well, it looked like two addresses there. That was,
Yeah, well, right now our tenant is a young engineer that works up by the airport. So I think he has a different mail. I mean, his mailbox, I don't know, ours is 321, so his is probably 323 or something.
right. And the total acreage you have there, it's over an acre, right?
Yes,
1.2.
I think it's 1.2 or something like that.
Right. And I don't know, maybe CJ, you could chime in here. I don't know all these codes. With a building that large that would have the potential to be a residence, it isn't what he's planning for it right now. What can people put two residences or buildings of those size on that size property?
It depends on, I'll take a look at what the zoning allows, but I don't believe so without an area variance. Let me go bring up the land use ordinance and I could tell you right quick.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, I did have another question. On the paperwork that was completed, are you requesting 10 feet? Like, what is the total variance that you're requesting? I couldn't tell. It looks like it's 10 feet.
Well, it's my understanding that the building has to be more than 10 feet from the property line, and that's what is making it difficult. So I'm not quite sure how best to phrase it. I'm not exactly sure how I phrased it, but what our request is, and my conversation with our neighbors was that we be allowed to get closer to the property line than 10 feet. And it's just because every foot we go away sort of exponentially increases the amount of digging, fill, and everything else that we have to do to make it happen. It's quite steep.
Mm-hmm. So you are looking to potentially go up to the adjoining property line?
Yeah, I would say that if I was going to just phrase it, the simplest way, it would be up to, but not over the property line. And then I would modify that by saying it would be my hope that we could get reasonably far from the property line so it's not sitting right on it.
Thank you.
So if I take that into consideration, you're just asking us to figure out of that 10 feet, what would we give you as a variance? Would we give you the whole 10
Yeah,
feet?
maybe that's what ideally I would love to have a variance that says, okay, we can go up to the property line, but we can't go over it, obviously. And I would say up to the property line, and making sure that no part of the structure, including the eaves and the overhang or anything else, goes over the property line. So for instance, if we just magically move the building 10 feet away from the property line, then we have a problem we've got a basement that we either have to fill all that amount or put in retaining walls, which never seem to work out, figure out how you do that. And my hope is that we can kind of tuck this into the hillside as a basement and kind of preserve the grade of the natural grade of the land around it.
So.
Go ahead, Maureen.
Tucking it into the hillside on the north side or the west side of the property, or how much tucked in?
It would sort of be tucked in the maximum amount on the north side, and then also on the rear and on the south side as well. So the entire garage part would be essentially a basement, and then the first floor and the cupola would be the structure that would be effectively on grade. So part of this is a way of making the building appear smaller by having a good portion of it underground. It means it's going to mean a whole lot more concrete. So the difference between this plan and the original plan, which looked very much like this, was that the first floor was just framed normally. And this would require the first floor to be poured concrete, like a basement.
So to answer the board's question, the minimum lot area in per dwelling unit in L1 with lake frontage is 20,000 square feet. This parcel, existing parcel as it is 1.14 acres, which is 49,658 square feet. So yes, theoretically, you could have another dwelling unit on this property, assuming that the structure that's currently there is just a single family home. Is that correct?
He's got an apartment, but
I don't know.
Yeah,
No, I'm asking the
certainly
applicant.
Not our plan.
It's currently only as a single family home on the property, or an apartment, or one dwelling unit. Is that correct?
Right now, it's a single family home with an apartment in the basement.
Oh, it's a single family home with an apartment in the basement. Okay, so you have 2 dwelling units already. So you're done. Like, that's
Okay.
it. No more habitable space. And Lynn has also, just for the board's knowledge, Lynn has also looked at this from a code perspective and did speak to the applicant about that 50% threshold on the basement, because that would be another story if it weren't at least 50% below grade. So the applicant has already been told that as far as the height goes, that cannot be that basement level cannot be more than 50% above that. So there could be no habitable space whatsoever in this garage. My understanding is that it's purely a garage.
Correct. And I appreciate Lynn was helpful in helping us figure the other stuff out. We had the grading stuff redrawn by the engineer, which I hope addresses that.
Rick or Mary, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I was just curious, did you ever talk to Campbell's about selling you 10 feet?
Yeah, it's interesting. So the Campbells own the property on all 3 sides of us. And the property to the north of us, which is the property that we're under discussion, is only, I think, 50 or 60 feet wide. It's a narrow strip, so it's not a buildable piece of property. And in fact, I think there's an old foundation and a well there. I would love to buy that someday, but I don't think they're interested in selling at this point. I mean, that would have been a great solution, but someday, if they're ever interested in selling, I would certainly love to have the land behind us as well, just to preserve it.
Do you currently have a garage?
We have a garage on the house, which is right now I have to remove just about everything to get a screwdriver out of the back of it. So that's right now I can't put my vehicle in the garage because I have all my tools other stuff in there. We're a little bit garage depleted at the moment. And, you know, it's my fault that it's taken 10 years to get this done. But life has been happening in the meantime.
Mary, did you have any questions?
I think all mine have been answered. Everyone else's questions.
CJ, I just have a kind of a technical question. So the applicant is asking the way it's written for 10-foot variance from the 10-foot side yard requirement. Are we supposed to be only considering that request? Or can we say, well, we're willing to give a 2-foot variance or something? So is it a yes or no to this 10-foot request?
The zoning board of appeals can consider what they think is the minimum variance to satisfy the condition, essentially. So if you think that he should be a foot away or 2 feet away for whatever reason, that's up to the board to deliberate based on the 5-step review that we're about to undertake. And if I could just briefly, Melanie had asked a question about the agricultural data statement. Those are not required for area variances, only use variances, but it was placed in the packet. And so I think the applicant just completed it as like a courtesy, since, and those parcels actually are going to be coming out of, they're going to be coming out of the agricultural district, but they'll still be surrounded by them anyway for the future.
Does anybody have any more questions for the applicant at this time? Okay, seeing none. Did we receive any public comment except for the, you know, we got the letter from the Campbells? Was there anything else?
Sue is on here somewhere. She might be able to chime in about the TOL codes account. I did not receive anything, but it's possible that main account did receive a comment. There's also somebody here called iPhone who's in the waiting room. Dare we admit them? They're part of this, looking to comment on this process.
I'm okay to admit them if you think they're regarding this variance.
And I do have one email here that looks like it's a comment. Do you want to do the person that's already there, or? This is actually Drew Minson, who says that he's attempted to enter the meeting via my computer, a cell phone, and a phone app, but wasn't able to get in. Hearing one pertains to 321 Bill George Road, and I'm a neighbor. I received a message in the waiting room asking who I was and what item I'm interested in, but there was no option to respond on the screen. I also attempted to view the material for the appeal, but there was no data in the internet that he received. I will attempt to enter the meeting again. So that is probably who's in the waiting room right now.
Okay,
Okay.
great. Let's let him in. Boy, technical difficulties.
Yeah.
So hold just a moment, please. Oh. I'm surprised these things go as well as they do, frankly. Okay. Okay. Hello. Sorry about the trouble connecting there, Drew. Oh. There he is.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
So I haven't done this before with the zoning, so I wasn't sure how to respond to the message. It was a message asking me what I was interested in, and there was no response available on the screen.
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know why you weren't able to respond to the chat.
Yeah, so is the meeting over, I assume, or?
No, you're here in the public hearing.
Oh, okay, all right.
We're in public comment, so you're free to speak at this point.
Oh, all right. Well, I'm a neighbor of 321 Bill George Road, and I was just mainly curious about what's going on. I attempted to look for some information about the appeal, but there wasn't anything listed on the internet at the link. So I at this point, I'm just curious about what is going on and why the zoning appeal is being requested.
And we just
like me to
heard from the
Hi.
applicant. Sure.
We're putting a garage on our property behind the house. And about 10 years ago, we planned and received a permit to build the garage to the south side of the house behind our house. But we really couldn't figure out a way to actually build it without impinging upon our septic field or getting too close to the drainage, the stream that goes between our property and the Campbells to the south of us. And so we've changed the entire plan to move it to the north side of the property so that we can avoid the septic field and septic area, just to preserve that, since that's a more difficult thing to have here near the lake. And the challenge is that on the north side of the property behind the house, it's a very steep slope. And so the variance is really to put the foundation and the foundation for this structure on undisturbed property. It gets very difficult for us to get farther than 10 feet from the property line of the Campbells, which is to the north of us. They own a strip of property to the north of us. And if each foot that we go away from the property line, the excavation and amount of dirt will have to move, and it goes up exponentially. So what we're requesting is that we can get closer than the required 10 feet to the property line. And our original conversation was with the Campbells, our neighbors, to make sure that that was acceptable to them.
Okay, so they're good with it, I assume. But I'm just interested in the whole idea of the setbacks, because I may have a situation coming up, a similar situation with a neighbor. And also, I was just curious what was going on, and unfortunately, I was not able to really see the documents.
And Drew, I could speak to that, and definitely feel free to contact me if you couldn't find the future. Our computer didn't like the uploads that I made, and of course it missed it. So hopefully they're there now. But if I could just show you real quick, I'll just do a quick screen share. This is the site in question. Hopefully you can see that. So this is the parcel in question. This is the area upon which they wish to emplace the garage. Let's switch to share here, and then the materials are there on the website now. Thankfully, they managed to upload. And this is the request for the new structure on that parcel that I just showed you.
Right. Okay.
Which property is yours, Drew?
I'm at 290.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I walked by your place the other day and saw your cars back there. I assume that's where you were playing the garage, but
yeah, it's the garage. It's the cars without a garage.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's fine. I just, wanted to participate since I'm a neighbor and find out what was going on. And it doesn't really affect me personally. So, I don't really have an opinion. I'm sort of anti-big development, and I like the neighborhood the way it is. So I'm not really anxious to see, some of these mega mansions that are may happen. So anyway, I'm just interested in keeping the character of the neighborhood. I mean, your garage, I'm sure in the back is not going to affect that. So
I would say we're of like mind.
good.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for that. So it doesn't sound like you're raising any opponent aspect to the request at this time.
No.
Okay. Does anybody have any more questions before we close the public hearing aspect? Okay, so once we close the public hearing, Mr. Parker, we will address questions to you. So if we have any questions, we will ask you. But other than that, it's for the board to deliberate, just so you're aware of that. So are people ready to close the public hearing? And if so, somebody would like to move it. Okay, I'll move it. Is there somebody who'd like to second? Melanie?
I'll second it.
Sure.
We're a little bit delayed, but Melanie did raise her hand. So, and that is at 7:14, according to my computer. So we'll call for a vote for closing the public hearing. Maureen Cowan,
Yes.
Richard Hayes,
Yes. Aye.
Melanie Malone.
Aye.
Thank you. And Judy Drake, aye. Thank you, Mary. Okay, so now we will bring it back to the committee for discussion, or the board, I'm sorry, for discussion. What kind of thoughts do the board members have at this point before we go to findings?
One of the things I was thinking of, it sounds like that the applicant would like to go right to the line. What about maintenance? I mean, if we'd allowed him to go right to the line, he's going to have to go on the neighbor's property possibly to do any kind of like roof work or anything like that.
What was that?
Well,
That was about maintenance?
Yeah, if you have to do any maintenance on it later, we allow you to go to the line. How are you going to do that?
Yeah, that's sort of my thought was that the way I would try to do this is to have at least the eaves and stuff be no further than the line. So you'd have whatever, I don't know, there's 18 inches or so eave space, etc. So theoretically, you wouldn't have to get on the line to do anything other than possibly paint, I guess. And then the rest of the upper part of the building would be accessible from the other two sides. So theoretically, if the property to the north of us was suddenly saltwater full of sharks, we could technically maintain it without, having to go onto the neighbor's property.
Any board members, other thoughts?
I have just one comment.
Maureen?
The design looks very nice, and I understand the reason behind it, and especially I'm hearing, I guess the main point is the aesthetics of the building lining up with the front house, with the house in the front. And it seems to me that as a board, then we're deciding how much space to, to allot this, request, because the request is not clear. It's not
Right.
10 feet. I mean, so,
Seems to be like a request for an exemption, actually, isn't
I think
it?
that would be the best way to put it.
I mean, I don't know if that's
Um,
a technic, is that what technically?
I was thinking it would be a request to for an exemption to the 10-foot spacing required from the property line. And frankly, I'd have to, we would have to go look at the survey stakes and stuff to make sure we understood exactly where that is. But I know that we're very close to it right now, and just in conversation with the Campbells when we were actually out there clearing the space. But it would be to have it no closer than necessary, but if necessary, closer than the 10-foot required. And in no circumstance beyond the line itself.
Okay, so I'll just kind of give you some of my thoughts on it right now. Go ahead, Melanie.
Oh, no, that's okay.
I was just saying, there's no way that I'm gonna approve a 10-foot setback variance. There's room to move. In this, it might not be exactly desirable of what they want, but there's definitely room to move so that there's at least some setback from the property line. So I don't know how others feel about that.
well, having looked at the property today, and I saw a number of very large vehicles parked back up on that space, it does seem, I mean, it's hard to visualize exactly how the building is going to sit there, but I just think that a 10-foot variance just seems too much, given the other types of variance situations that we've also asked people to go back and take a look at their design and work with it within the space, because there is a very large space there.
The circumstances of this lot are common in this area, yes, and were there when these lots were purchased, and 10 feet is not is generally not a lot of space. And my concern is going forward, how are we ensuring we're upholding, the land use ordinance in a way that's fair for everyone in these situations? Because this property, many properties in this area are in similar situations, correct? Where it's on these steep slopes, right, going down to the lake.
Yes, that is true, Melanie, but this property has a lot of space.
Yeah.
Similar to other variances that we've had down near, like we had one recently where they wanted to build like a tower near the, right on the water, very congested area. We had similar considerations then.
Okay, do folks think they're ready to go over some of the questions? Have we had enough discussion? Yes.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. All right, so why don't we go to our resolution and finding. We'll start with the resolve. Town of Lansing Zoning Board of Appeals hereby makes the following findings with respect to specific criteria for area variances as set forth Town Law Section 267-B3B and other applicable provisions of law and the zoning ordinance. So our first question is whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance.
I believe that's the case. I think it's going to be a beautiful building. I hope it'd be a detriment to the area.
Can I respond to this as well,
Sure.
or?
No, Tom, at this point, it's really up to the board to come to determination.
Okay.
So, I don't think there's any undesirable change for the neighborhood. I mean, nearby properties. Go ahead.
In this circumstance, the design is beautiful. I think the intent is fabulous, but coming up to the property line with a building, wouldn't that have the potential to change the character of this area? If you're allowed to build up to the property line of your neighbor?
To me, that would fall more under a detriment to a nearby.
My perspective.
Say that again, Judy?
Detriment to what, please?
I was thinking, I think the character of the neighborhood is fine, what he wants to build. But I would see it more as a detriment to the nearby property by the aspect of building right up to the lot line.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
So it's,
Part of it is a yes and part of it is a no.
right. So where do people
Well,
want to
it
go?
would be a yes because the answer would be yes because the question is phrased. It's not phrased and, it says or. Will it produce a change in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties? It doesn't have to be both to answer yes, right?
Right.
Correct.
Mhm. So
And the
I'm
considerations
okay with a yes on that.
considerations are in the
Go
little
ahead.
paragraph right under that question. So that could give you some guidance on how to answer that.
And, okay, so do we want to take a little straw vote here, and how many people are yes, how many people are no?
I would say yes.
I'm yes.
I'm yes.
I'll say
Okay,
yes.
Mary?
Yeah, I agree. Yes.
Okay. And I believe our findings with the physical aspect is too close to the next property line, or too close to the property. And okay. B, whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. What do people think about that?
I would say yes. It's a 2,600 square foot garage. Could it be modified to fit the side yard setback? I mean, as far as size goes, potentially, it could be, maybe. Does it have to be that large? I don't know.
So again, this is not something that I can respond to at this point.
At this point in time, we need to do our findings.
Okay.
So, Rick, Mary, Maureen,
I agree with Melanie. I think the size of the garage is quite substantial. I realize he's talking about storage. And yet it seems like with the size of the property, something could be modified there. Either the movement of the building or change in the size.
I think it could have been modified. It was just the expense of it. I think the applicant told us that it was really expensive. So it probably could be moved over to where the lines need to be. It's just more costly.
For this type of building.
Correct.
Or the size, you know, would the cost be more if the size was smaller? I don't know. I understand the point about the position, the location of the building, it being more expensive. I understand that piece.
I would be a yes on this. I think there are some other things that can be looked at. And I think the possibility of looking at things and coming back with a set number, something other than the total 10-foot setback might be possible. So I would be a yes on that. Rick?
I as well.
Okay. So whether the requested area variance is substantial,
Yes.
I would say yes.
Yes.
It's a complete variant to 100%. Okay, is everyone okay with
Yeah.
that? Okay. And D, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental condition of the neighborhood or district. I would say no. Anybody else?
No.
No.
Okay. And whether the alleged difficulty was self-created.
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it looks like we have 4 yeses and 1 no. So I think in my take on that, CJ, you could help us out, but I think that would be denied.
Well, that's up to the zoning board to find, but generally speaking, when there's that many yes answers, then it would be assumed that that would be the case, but there would, you'd need to essentially follow the determination and someone make a motion for it to be denied.
So it's hereby determined by the Town of Lansing Zoning Board of Appeals that the following variance is
Denied.
denied. With any conditions here I've stated, if being further found. Okay, would somebody like to move that this variance is denied? Maureen? Somebody like to second that?
Second.
Rick? Okay. There's a roll call vote on this. Are we ready to vote or any other comments? Good. Okay, so Maureen Cowan,
Yes.
Richard Hayes,
Aye.
Melanie Malone,
Hi.
Mary Stowe,
Aye.
Judy Drake, aye. Okay. So at this point, we have denied your area variance. I think there's still an opportunity to come back with some other thoughts, and definitely, you know, a set number, whether you want a 2-foot variance or 4-foot variance. I think that would be helpful for us to be able to consider as you look at the design. Okay. So we will move on to our next public hearing if people are ready.
Can I ask so from here, what do I, so you're saying that I need to look at alternatives to citing this and reapply, or?
Yeah, Tom, you can follow up with me here tomorrow if you'd like. And I
Okay,
can give you some guidance on the possible next steps. All right?
okay. Thank you
Okay.
so much for your time. I'm just curious, have you guys been doing these virtual meetings for a couple months now? How's that worked out?
March.
It's March, yeah.
My wife and I worked with a group at Cornell that invented video conferencing back in 1995. So this is what our screens looked like on campus 25 years ago. It's kind of interesting now that we're retired to see this stuff happening. So thank you for your time.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank
Good
you for
luck.
creating something
you.
like this. Thank you. Okay, group. So we'll move on to our second public hearing if we're all ready. This public hearing is in consideration of an amendment of an appeal made by Adele Gay Nicholson, owner and applicant of 1 Maple Ave, tax parcel number 26-10-6 or 13.2, located in a residential moderate density R2 zoning district.
Oh. We lost her. Oh, there she is. She's back. Oh, but she's stuck.
Equipment.
Sorry. I'm back. Let's see. Schedule 2, which requires a 60-foot minimum front yard setback from the center of the road. Applicant was granted an area variance 19-09 on November 26, 2019 for the requested 29-foot minimum yard setback requirement to facilitate placement of a carport over an existing gravel parking space. This appeal is for an amendment of that variance to allow placement of a carport that is wider than 2 feet 6 inches with overhangs and with a different aesthetic appearance. This is a type 2 action under the State Environmental Quality Review Act. Somebody would like to open that public hearing? Do we? Maureen?
Yes, I'll open the public hearing.
I'll second.
Thank you, Melanie. And that is at 7:36. Okay, for vote, Maureen Cowan,
Yes.
Richard Hayes,
Here.
Melanie Malone,
Here.
Mary Stowe,
Here.
and Judy Drake. Yes. Okay, so we've opened the public hearing. Is there anybody that's going to be speaking about this? CJ? Anybody in
Yes,
waiting
the
room?
applicants, yep, the owner and applicant are here, so I'll go ahead and admit them. We got to figure out this chat
Okay.
function. Why I can't chat with the, anyway.
I also have
David.
no new emails that have come in for this particular public hearing.
You received none? Is that what you said too?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. All right, so we do have the public hearing open. The applicant would like to discuss the request.
Emails that have come in for this particular public hearing.
You received none? Is that what you said too?
Correct.
Okay.
Somebody has the live streaming still on.
We do have the public hearing open. The applicant would like to discuss the request.
Hi, I'm here. Should I start?
Bert, if you could just mute or turn off the YouTube stream,
Oh, okay.
then the feedback will stop.
Yes.
Somebody has the live streaming still on.
The public hearing open. The applicant would like to discuss the request.
All righty. We good?
I think so.
Okay. I'm Bert Fortner. I'm an architect, and I worked with Gay Nicholson on the variance for a carport for her property, for her front of her property. And there isn't much room for a carport there. So both the car is going to be small and the carport is going to be small. I tried to get a carport that would sort of reflect the modern idiom of architecture rather than try to match the historic Greek Revival house. And hence the carport shown in our variance. It was sort of a daring move for an old fogey like me, but you know, it seemed like it might work. I still think that was a pretty good approach. However, as we tried to implement it, it turned out, as I knew at the beginning, to be difficult. The basic spec on the building doesn't meet either the wind load requirements or the snow load requirements for this area. I had bad information from the company that led me to think that we could improve that. And we can make it a little bit better, but nothing that approaches, excuse me, the required snow load and wind load. I worked with a couple of engineers that I know, and I worked with a company a bit. They were reluctant to talk about it. I think one of the reasons is that the current spec on that building really doesn't meet any area in the country. Its wind loading is too small, and its snow loading is very small compared to what you would need in a snow country. But the wind is the problem. So Gay was thinking that we might shift to something else, and so was I. So we did we came up with a much more traditional type of building, still sort of a light feel. This is a wood frame. It's the idea is to use translucent greenhouse style panels on the top, keep the area underneath the light, but still covered and protected. And the size of the building is just a tiny bit smaller than the one we had proposed. The new building is a little bit smaller, but that's if you count the footprint. And I know that there is a requirement that for an area variance, the area includes, unlike for other sorts of variances and permits, It includes the overhang of the roof. The overhang of the roof in this case, the original had none on two sides and 4 feet roughly on the other two sides. I'm matching the other two sides, and the overhang on the sides that had none is about 1'3". So the posts are in exactly the same spot as the building we got the variance for. The overhang on the ends is the same. The overhang on the sides is 1'3" larger on each side. And that's about it. I think, at least I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions for Bert? Go ahead, Maureen.
So how close is the overhang to the property line?
That hasn't
Is that a
changed.
concern?
That hasn't changed from your application.
Okay.
That's the same as it is in our original application.
Okay, so that hasn't changed, it's just that there's been an increase in the overhang from the previous design.
I'm sorry, I'm having really hard time hearing you.
Okay.
Leaning closer doesn't help, it's interesting.
I was trying to understand can you hear me now? No? I'm not muted. I was trying to understand the amount of the overhang.
Yes, the overhang on the front and back, in other words, the street side and the house side, is exactly the same as on the application, within an inch.
Okay.
The overhang on the planks, the two sides where you don't enter, is 1'3" wider.
It is.
And I think that goes to, let's see, I'm sorry, hang on one second, got that here. Somewhere. Look on those.
So other than style, that's the major change. Is that correct?
I believe so, yeah, as far as I can tell. Yep.
Okay.
Kind of a little bit of a note to the zoning board is that generally speaking, if this were, say, a site plan approval, and this came back to this office, that could be, that modification could be made here in this office without a board approval. But given that this was an increased width, even if it was just a small or de minimis amount, and it had a very significant change in the architecture, it seemed prudent to ask the board to consider this again.
So our main question is, it's almost exactly the same except for the structures design is a little bit different, but we're looking at an increase of 2 feet 6 inches than what we considered last time.
Exactly, and this design is sort of a very near relative of a storage structure shed that's built on the far end of the property. I know that in the existing application that we did, there is a photo or two of that shed. It's a gray building, and it's at the far end of the property from Gay's house.
Okay. So the variance is for, which requires a 60-foot minimum front yard setback, and the request is 29 feet from the minimum yard setback, so 50%. So any other questions for the applicant?
Well, the side yard setback seems to be the question that's different because of the overhang being increased, right?
But I'm not within 10 feet of the side yard.
Okay.
This was strictly a front of the street variance, which was already granted.
Right.
Right. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Are we ready to end the public hearing and come back for discussion with just the board? Okay. So at this point, Bert, we're going to close the public hearing. After we close the public hearing, if we have any questions, we will ask you questions. But okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. So I will move to close the public hearing, whatever time it is, 7:47. Somebody would like to second that?
Second.
Hi, who, I'm sorry, do I,
Terry?
no, I don't ask you. Are you, who recognizes the person who wants to speak? Can't be me. Is it?
No.
No, I didn't think so.
Okay, so all those, I guess we'll do it as a call. So vote to close the public hearing. Maureen Cowan,
Aye.
Richard Hayes,
Aye.
Melanie Malone,
Aye.
Mary Stowe,
Aye.
Judy Drake's aye. Okay, so at this point, we're back to the board for review and deliberation. So what are folks thinking based on the criteria that we need to look at?
Well, I think that since it's going to be, relatively the same size, it's not going to, be any closer to the road, and it's going to be sort of matching that other shed that they have now. I don't think the overhang is really going to affect it because it's not going to interfere with the side set. So, I mean, I don't think that that's a huge issue, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I agree.
Okay.
Seems like it's
I agree as well.
the previous request.
All right. Okay, are we ready to go through our findings? Looks that way.
Yes.
So for our resolve, the town of Lansing zoning board of appeals hereby makes the following findings with respect to specific criteria for area variances is set forth in town law section 267-B3B and other applicable provisions of law and zoning ordinance. I can never say that word. Okay, so A, whether the undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties will be created by granting the area variance. I would say no. What do others say?
No.
No.
Okay, looks like that one is no. Looks like they've taken into consideration the neighborhood and trying to be mindful of that. Let's see, B, whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance.
No.
No.
Okay. They're pretty limited in space, and the lot itself just creates that limitations. And they've already been using that. Okay, so C, whether the requested area variance is substantial.
No.
No.
Okay. Are we all okay with no?
No. Yeah.
D, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood.
No.
No.
The person's already parking there. It's already been used in that aspect. And it's an open garage. Or not garage, whatever we're calling it. Whether the alleged difficulty was self-created,
No.
I would say no. The homes are there are historically this close to the road with some limitations.
Correct.
Okay, so we're ready to make determination based on the above factors. It is hereby determined by the Town of Lansing Zoning Board of Appeals that the following area variance is,
Granted.
looks like granted.
Yes.
With any conditions hereafter stated, it's being further found and determined that one, the benefit of the applicant outweighs any potential negative impact or detriment to the neighborhood or community. And two, such area variance is the minimum necessary is adequate to grant relief and at the same time preserve and protect the character of the neighborhood and the safety and welfare of the community. Are there any conditions that we want? When we looked at the last time we did this variance, we included such conditions as the carport may not be enclosed. And then we always have our one that they have to build it in a certain period of time or the variance will expire. So I would agree to those two. Okay.
Conditions should stand.
Okay, anything else? Okay, so would somebody like to move this motion to grant?
Right.
Okay. Okay. Is there a second?
I will. Maureen.
Maureen, okay. Okay, so we'll do a vote for that. Maureen Cowan,
Yes.
Richard Hayes,
Aye.
Melanie Malone,
I,
Mary Stowe,
Aye.
Judy Drake, aye. Okay. So Bert, you have been granted that variance.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your consideration of it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we will come back to this board. We had on the agenda to consider annual training. Is that something that we still want to do, or what are people thinking? Or
What are our other options?
Well, you could thank your fellow Conservation Advisory Council members for advocating for a reduced curriculum, shall I say.
yes.
But the two videos are about sexual harassment and workplace violence, and they're about 15 minutes apiece. So we could do them at the next meeting if you'd prefer. I know this was kind of long. Or I could just pop them on now. It's really your call, whatever works for all of you.
Okay. Why don't we take a vote? We'll do the democracy way. Who wants to stay on and finish this tonight? Say yes.
Yes, I will do it.
I'm indifferent. I can go either way. It doesn't matter to me.
Doesn't matter to me either. So if everybody wants to get it over with, we'll do it. Or
I'd be happy to get it over with tonight.
Okay.
sure. Either way, it's fine.
All right.
Okay. All right. Well,
yeah.
116 minutes here.
And they're thrilling videos. Come on, folks.
It's
Hey,
not
Judy,
yes.
Do you want me to stay on for this, or I
Yes.
just did this last night?
You sure don't want to watch them again? All right.
Susan, you need training. Come on.
It's that you're not exactly a ringing endorsement of these videos, but okay. Yes.
Do we have
No
to
worries.
stay on as the board, or can we actually adjourn and then do the training?
I'd prefer you stay on as the board because I'm going to take a screenshot, and that's going to be evidence that you're,
Okay.
if that's okay.
That's fine.
This is official board duty, so thank you.
Okay.
We're still on YouTube, right?
Yes, but we certainly don't.